Wasting no time, the instructor walked forwards again as the three judges simply pointed down and started shuffling their papers around. Speaking loudly, as if nothing had happened, he called out again. Daisy Fields! Clear, fly, fall, complete. Scootaloo and Orion stared, slack-jawed, as another pony gulped and then walked forwards onto the path and took off. They turned back to the tuft on the cloud where Aurora landed and stared, as the wind blew the fragments that were thrown up from the collision away. They saw the shivering yellow body attempt to move, only to collapse with a cry. Faraday spots! Clear, fly, fall, complete. Aurora still struggled to walk, wailing with every step. Her legs weren't broken, she could use them fine, but it was obvious the pain from her wing joints and the loss of her potential life was crushing her. Scootaloo felt Orion shuffle uneasily, tears welling in his eyes, for a frown formed on his face. Holiday shine! Clear, fly, fall, complete. No one's coming to help her? Orion seethed through his closed teeth. Scootaloo felt extremely sad for the yellow Pegasus, but couldn't see herself helping her. She would be failed herself and sent away, far from Cloudsdale and any familiar place on Equestria, to a place where she and any other failed students could never stain Cloudsdale's reputation. It was a terrible shame, but Scootaloo couldn't fail herself. She couldn't fail her friends, and she definitely couldn't fail Rainbow Dash. Not after the care and help she had given her Scootaloo's whole life. Scootaloo blinked the tears from her eyes and forced herself to watch the competing students. One after another took off, successfully passed the test, and flew to the east gate, under the judge's spot in the stands. That's all Scootaloo's focused on. Pass the test, fly to the gate, live a happy life. Orion Solstice! Clear, fly, fall, complete. No. What? The instructor took a step back, one leg left raised in the air. You can't just refuse your flight test. Get out there before you piss the judges off. No. Don't even pretend you care about my future if you don't care about hers, Orion defied, unsure about himself. You say you want me to get a good life, and yet you let those that fail suffer unbearable pain? Get out onto that field before I fail you myself, the instructor shouted menacingly. Fine, Orion spoke sharply, before walking onto the ramp. He stared at the judges, waited for the individual nods, and the second they came, he took off. However, long before the starting altitude, he turned sharply and landed gently next to Aurora. She turned and looked at him, blood running down her forehead and sides, and tears streamed down her face. What are you doing? You'll fail. Like me. You'll be exiled. I'd rather be exiled from a place that treats ponies like this than live my life while others don't live theirs. Aurora smiled, happiness briefly replacing her sadness in her blackened, puffy eyes, until she stumbled again and intense pain flashed across her body. Orion leaned in close, using his wing to brace the yellow pony against himself. He stared up at the judges, beaming with hate in his vision. They stared down, unaffected, and simply pointed down, before looking back towards the ramp for the next contestant. Scootaloo stood shocked, hardly hearing her name called. She moved numbly up the ramp, never taking her eyes off her friend, the pony he sacrificed himself to help. After a brief moment, she shook her head, recovered her thoughts, and looked to the judges. Thoughts passed through her head as she watched them all nod. Oh, Celestia, what do I do? I can't let everyone I know down, but I'll never see Orion again. I suppose. I hope he knew what the risk was when he did that. I'm sure he's thinking the same right now. She glanced at Orion. He wasn't looking at her. She took off, heartbroken. Instinct kicked in as the familiar rush of wind cooled her and blew her thoughts away. She stopped in the right altitude and launched again. Sensing and seeing every cloud, forming a game plan. In a matter of a couple dozen seconds, the sky was clear. She did a quick loop in mid-flight, aiming at the first hoop. The powerful flash of her wings, she propelled forward through the first ring, and then the second, and then the third, expertly turning and drifting. She curved in towards the second last ring, near the bottom of the field. As she descended, she caught sight of Orion and Aurora, almost at the west gate now. Orion turned his head and smiled weakly. Scootaloo's focus shattered. Orion knew what he did. He cared about her. He'd miss her. And he'd never get to say goodbye. Scootaloo cranked into the bottom part of the ring, falling backwards several feet and hitting the ground. With a sudden intense flash of fear, she flipped herself onto her feet and began flapping her wings, levitating off the ground. Maybe that didn't count as a failure, she thought. I can still fly. It was a distraction on the field. She spun around to the judges. 3 hooves pointed down. Scootaloo started crying there, tears welling up and blurring her vision. This wasn't right. This shouldn't have happened. None of it. Orion should have passed his test and cheered her on from the east gate. She shouldn't have looked at him. She should have focused on flying. But there was no room for excuses. Defeated, she slowly hovered towards Orion and settled down next to him. She looked him in her purple eyes. He looked back, offering a smile. You did a good job. Scootaloo dropped her head and sobbed. Then she walked around Orion, lifted a wing of her own, and helped Aurora walk to the west gate. Before them stood a long, unlit hall, with only a cheap sign stuck to the wall, notifying Tess Faileys to proceed down the hall. They waited, only briefly, to gather themselves and prepare for where they would be taken, and then all stepped forward together.